Until you do, it's not a bad idea to have them as beneficiaries, but just remember that's something that you need to flag for urgent attention. Planning for finances for your minor children. Okay, so now you've got two things that are all squeaky clean and updated, and where do you put this material so that somebody can find it and use it? You should have all these important papers in some central location where people know where they are. You shouldn't try to make this fancy. You shouldn't try to make it complicated, because 99% of us won't do it if it's too hard, too busy with other things, and this is just too complex. So think about a file cabinet. You may decide that you want to have a safe. Some people ask about safe deposit boxes, and I don't much care for them because they're complicated and inconvenient. But if you want to be safer than a file cabinet, consider an in-house safe of some sort, and there's a lot of different kinds. The only reason I've ever had somebody give me for having a safe deposit box was keeping film negatives. And with online storage nowadays, that's probably not even a good reason. So think about where you're going to keep those papers and how you're going to keep them safe. And then think about who's going to know about that safe place. You and your spouse, family members, siblings, parents. You need a few people to have some idea of where to go to look and how to get into those places that you decide. If you do decide after all this that you do want a safe deposit box, please have a couple of people on that, because the rule is if you're one person on a safe deposit box and you pass away or can't get into that box, the clerk of court has to go and open that box. And that's a tedious process, and even more tedious in this current miserable situation that we're facing right now. So once you've decided on a safe place, then think about how you're going to put all these papers together and make one easy go-to place for your important things. So get a few simple folders and just start putting things into them. You should have a folder for car titles. You should have a folder for important documentation like certificates, marriage licenses, death certificates, all of those various certificates and passport kinds of things that you have. Dump all those in one folder right there. And then if you have wills, a folder there. Then behind that, how about folder for each asset? So you have a 401k, you get a statement. So once a year, put the year-end statement into a folder in that drawer that says 401k, or doesn't, it's just a folder. And maybe you have an investment at TD Ameritrade or some other place. And again, you're going to get year-end statements. Now, do not confuse taxes with the year-end statement that says, here's how much you had at the end of the year. You want, here's how much you had at the end of the year to be in a folder right behind your will. So if you fall under the bunny truck and you're suddenly gone, somebody needs to know what you have. They can open that drawer and they go, okay, well, last December, here's what it was. And that's a pretty good estimate of what you had. Make sense?
Yes.
So we want everything just stuck in there. You want to make it simple. You want to make it easy. At the year end, you're sorting out tax papers. We'll just add one more sorting pile. Put all this stuff into a folder in your special drawer and make sure that family members know where that drawer is. Okay? Now get to it. Here's the step. Get your little magnet basket on the side of the refrigerator or a basket on a hook right where you come in the door. Somewhere, just a little catch it basket. Now, this isn't a basket that your mail comes in, but this is a basket where you put year-end papers. In January, your tax papers start coming in. You get 1099s and you get one and you're in the middle of the kids are screaming and needing supper and those things are going to get dropped. Well, if you can drop them into, here's the important paper, got to deal with it basket, where you put your 1099 stuff, your year-end stuff, car title that just got back from the lender because you paid off your car, your bank statement that needs to be balanced. All of those, you should have one special, and then another basket for miscellaneous mail that came in, bills you got to pay, and requests for donations and things like that. But keep these important papers in a place that it's easy to dump them into. And it will be a sorting pile that you know this stuff's important. And when I'm getting ready to do my taxes, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pull out all my 1099s and they're all there in a pile. My donations to the church. Thank you very much, Mary. Mm-hmm. And all of the things that you need for your year end. And at the same time, the record of what your assets are so that you make it very simple. And once or twice a year, you go through that basket, poke things where they need to be, and you've made yourself a reasonably organized system of people knowing what you've got and what they might need to do for you if you suddenly got sick or suddenly died. So, all right. Does anybody want to interrupt with any questions? Mary Beth, are we having hands raised?
Yes. Dee, we've had a question from Wendy.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Wendy would like to know some information about the Secure Act and how that has, let me read this out loud to you. Address the Secure Act and ask how it affects IRA beneficiaries.
Oh, man, we need to do a whole hour on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest summary, okay? The Secure Act was passed in great part because the government got tired of waiting and that were being rolled out over the course of several beneficiaries' lifetimes. So it used to be if your children were beneficiaries, so you have adult children, you name them as alternate beneficiaries on your IRA. And when they inherit this money, they could roll it over and keep it for their lifetime and do required minimum distributions. Well, that's gone. You can't do that anymore. If you have adult children, they have 10 years to pull it out. Now, they don't have to pull it out in required minimum distributions. They can pull it out all at one time or over the course of 10 years, but they can't roll it out the way we used to be able to. If your children are under 18, we can keep it in their name or in a trust, and this is where we have to roll on to, these aren't things you can do for yourself because you need a trust. And then 10 years from the time they turn 18. So that's one of the big changes of the Secure Act. Some of the good things are that if you're older and wanting to delay required minimum distributions, you can wait until 72 72 now instead of 70 and a half. And you can, if you're earning money still when you're over that age, you can keep on making contributions to your IRA. Used to be once you reached the age where you had to make withdrawals, you couldn't make deposits anymore, but now you can make deposits as well as the withdrawals being deferred. So there were a lot of changes, and at this point, for a lot of discussion to start coming out about how to use this for strategy, but I'm not seeing it now. We've gone to a lot of legal seminars on how to manage planning for this, but I think the other catastrophes and tax changes that we've had have made this an impossible detail in the background, but more will come, and we'll do some more on that later. Okay, does that answer your question? Did you have a specific concern about the Secure Act?
I think it was my question. Can you hear me, Dee?
Yes, I can.
Hi, it's Julie.
Hey, Julie.
It was my question because I was wondering if an IRA could be put into a trust for someone that would be the trust being a specific trust for health care for that individual, if they have specific health care needs that need to be paid for, and if that would still be taxed the same way with the Secure Act, because it's a trust.
There are some limited things you can do. There are some very technical definitions of people who are chronically ill or disabled, who can keep this money longer in an IRA than the 10-year limit. Those people can either have the money directly and keep it in an IRA, or we could draft a trust that would be suitable for them. Stuff, and that gets all into complicated lawyer stuff, and I'm trying to tell you how to do it yourself here.
Well, I don't want to distract from that. I was just curious about that one.
We'll come back and talk about those at another meeting. But I want you all to feel energized, empowered, not frustrated and helpless and quarantined there. So I'm trying to give you ideas of things that you can do, should do, to get things moving down the field a little bit. So we've talked about kind of organizing beneficiaries and papers and so forth. Now here's some other things. Think about what kind of care do you want if you got sick? Now, in my family, we have nurses and lawyers and people that like to think about stuff like this, and we talk about it. Well, if I was this and this and this, I'd want this and this and this. Now, some families, that's not acceptable conversation, but you need to have several close family members who understand what kind of care you want. It's all well and good to do a healthcare power of attorney. You absolutely need one. But if nobody knows the details of what you want, it's going to be hard to use that to an effective outcome. So make sure that several close family members understand what your values are, and don't get pulled off into, well, I want a ventilator under these circumstances. That's not helpful. Then I want my body to follow. Or if my body's gone, I don't care about how alert and okay I am. I want to go peacefully. So what are the important values for you here? Is it being physically dependent on people that is unacceptable? Is it, what's important? Okay? So talk to somebody. Then another thing you can do with another trusted person is getting somebody think carefully and talk. Who's going to be on the bank accounts? And be aware, joint with right of survivorship means if one of you dies, the other one gets it all. Now that's an important thing. It is not likely either one of you are going to die, and highly unlikely that both of you would die at the same time. So the survivor needs to have everything to manage to keep the family going. And joint with right of survivorship on your family bank accounts is a very important aspect of that. It's an important tool. But what about grandma? And one of the grandchildren is handling the finances for grandma. Well, so that grandchild goes to the bank with grandma and gets put on the bank account. Do they even know what just happened? Do they even know as an agent? There's huge differences. If you're just put on as an agent, then when grandma dies, we're going to have a probate estate, and everything is going to have to go through the court system. Well, okay, so that's one fact. But if there's 5 grandchildren and one grandchild is on their joint with right of survivorship, there's a possibility you've cut the other 4 grandchildren out of the loop, and they don't have a right to any of that money. Is that what grandma intended? Is that what the result is? So you have to think about who's on the bank account and how they're on the bank account. But it needs to be something that the family understands, that the family agrees to. It's common for one hale and hearty family member to go onto a bank account with someone who's getting frail, and that's a good thing. But everybody in the family needs to know what the arrangement is and needs to follow through and be honorable and honest about how that works. Does that make sense? So you need to know whether the person on the bank account is an agent or joint with right of survivorship, because you'll have different results. Okay. Now, doctors. If you don't have a healthcare power of attorney and you suddenly get sick, who's going to be able to speak for you? If at your doctor's office you've filled out a HIPAA form, then there's somebody that the doctor can legally talk to. If you haven't done that, the doctor, those healthcare providers are legally prevented from talking to anybody except you about your health care. So if you don't have a health care power of attorney, and you should get one, and that's definitely on your list of documents to consider. If you don't, at least do a HIPAA form at the doctor's office and at the pharmacist. And that would be a form set out by the federal government to allow specific information and specific individuals to access that information. So, all right. Next thing, see, now these are, we've moved on from you just organizing your house to moving on to talking to people and involving other people in your care and in your plan. A lot of people that come in to see me need a guardian for minor children. And I have a lot of people in the Research Triangle. There's a lot of people that didn't grow up here, didn't even grow up in the United States. And grandmama is off in some place that I can't even spell. And how are we going to make sure that these kids that are here with no extended family get taken care of? Well, the first thing you have to think about with respect to your children is, what happens if your car breaks down? You're out on I-40 coming home from work and you're in traffic and your car breaks down. And maybe your cell phone's not working or you left it in your office desk. Who knows you're supposed to show up? How are those kids going to get supper if you're stuck either in a traffic jam, broken down car on the highway, or in an accident and unconscious and unable to speak? What is the plan for your children? And for many of us, that would include your pets. How are we going to make sure that they're not frightened and lonely and abandoned, that they're picked up from school or after school care and taken home and all of the things handled, and the people who need to know and step in and take over? So make sure you have just a short-term emergency plan for your children, and make sure that short-term emergency plan, maybe a neighbor, maybe the parent of a child that your child plays with, make sure that person has the name of the children's doctor, necessary medications, next of kin, all their important family members, whether they're in Timbuktu or Zebulon. So start there. Daycare centers are real good, and schools are, I think, pretty good about making sure they have contact information. So think about that. And so you've started then with, okay, just a short term. I can't get there right when school lets out, or I'm not going to be there for dinner. Short term. And then that plan has to morph into, okay, if grandma's coming from Timbuktu or Aunt Sally's coming from Chicago to get the kids and take charge of them as a family member, well, how are we going to make life stuff? That's not lawyer stuff. We can make the interface. We can make the interface between the regular, real life, everyday plans and the legal mumbo jumbo that we have to deal with. And we have a lot of tools and strategies and so forth. But the first part is yours. Okay? Now, a lot of times people will have important items that are tangible personal property. They're family heirlooms, valuable items, hobby items that are intensely detailed. There's a lot of items that need to go to family, but history and information is as much an important piece of that as anything else. So be sure that you think about those items and think about where are they going to go and how are they going to get handled. All right, let me give you some examples. My grandmother had a brooch. She wore it all her life. My father inherited that brooch, and he wanted his oldest only granddaughter to have that. But he didn't want to just give it to her. He wrote out in his own handwriting a long history of that brooch that had belonged to his mother and when she wore it and where it came from and what it meant to him. And I can tell you that that handwritten note means more to me and my daughter than the brooch itself, because it's our bridge from the present back into the past to our family connections. So those important family items, the provenance, the history, the family sentiment is as important a piece of it as the item itself. So anything that's important enough for you to worry about, it's important enough for you to write down some things. What if you have an important collection of Legos? Everybody has hobbies, and these things have value that the uninitiated has no idea about, or no idea where to go to dispose of them. Now, nobody in your family wants your stupid Lego collection, but it's worth thousands and thousands if it's handled properly. You need to let somebody know. So you need to write down, if I die suddenly, here's who you contact to sell the train collection, the art collection, the Hummels, there are so many intricate, detailed collections that people have that they've collected over the years that have value to the initiated, but not to the uninterested. And so think about those and think about who's going to know who to get them. All right, how are we doing? Questions? I have one more thing, and then I'm ready to wind this up and open it up to any questions, or let you get on to less scary things. All right, passwords. That's my last. If you don't leave a list of passwords, everybody's going to have a very hard time accessing all your things. Now, there's 1,000 different ways to do this. There's online programs that you can get that you can have one secure password that will then secure all your other passwords. You can keep that list of passwords current and on your computer if your computer is secure, in a notebook at home. I have a friend who keeps her passwords disguised in a little sentimental Hallmark address book up on her shelf where nobody would think to look for it. So think about how you're going to make your passwords accessible to friends and family, and do something that will organize those just a little bit. And again, I've found that I have to keep them where I sit, where I'm working, and I have to keep them as I change them. So I keep a document that has the latest passwords on all the things that I use. So think about those passwords. All right. Does anybody want to throw in anything, add any questions?
I have a question, Dee.
Yes.
It's Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Does a person need a living will in addition to a healthcare power of attorney?
We combine them.
Okay.
When I draft a healthcare power of attorney, we have the living will as part of that document. This is kind of, okay, next steps. You can go to the Secretary of State and download a healthcare power of attorney and a living will there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the easiest forms to use, but you can do those. I would not recommend that you try to do your own financial power of attorney. I've never seen one that a non-lawyer drafted that wasn't pretty ugly. But the living will and the healthcare power of attorney, those you can manage those by yourself. If you look at our website, We have articles about those documents, the various documents you might need. And we have a will questionnaire that you can download to fill out that will help you. If you decide that you want to move on and do estate planning, the first thing you need to do is think about, number one, what your goals are. Number two, what your resources are. Make a list of your assets. It doesn't need to be fancy or detailed, just kind of general. And you can see I've talked to you about being aware of beneficiaries and joint with right of survivorship. So be thinking about those sorts of things as you make that list. So that's the next step for you, is to get your items organized and listed and written down. And we're doing telephone consultations mainly now, and so we're able to move on with planning for anybody that wants to take that next step. And some of you on this that and be planning to talk to me about planning for documents. And I hope this has kind of helped you get started on thinking about that.
Right.
And I welcome you to throw in with any other questions you might. No? Okay. All right. Send comments about other topics you'd like us to cover, and send questions. I'm happy to send you an email with an answer to a question if I can answer that. And I hope this has been helpful to get you started on thinking about this whole process of estate planning. I want you to be clear that there are a great many things that you can and should be doing for yourself. So, all right.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
David.
Go and be well. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.